Thank you, Caroline, and Robin for such an engaging conversation about what leadership looks like today. Next up, we'll be talking about food tech. We have been investing in food tech since 2016. Our portfolio includes Odeco, Joker, Bowery Farming, Growth Intelligence, plus Slice led by my partner Jeff Richards. All of them are in New York. Then is Ground Market in San Francisco, Shelf Engine in Seattle, followed by in Latin, Frubana in Vietnam, Tilio in India, Udon, and Katabook. Before we hear from leaders of some of these companies, let's dive into some trends we have observed in food tech. Number one, efficiency is the name of the game. You need to have scale to achieve that. Number two, localization plays a very important role in serving the community effectively. Number three, despite the success of DoorDash and Uber Eats, we think that the market opportunity is huge. Seeing Meituan grew and become a super app in Asia gave us the confidence and conviction to invest in Grab in Southeast Asia, which is led by my partner, Jixun. Lastly, most people are very familiar with B2C, and we did that with investments in Wish, Poshmark, StockX, Ibotta, Peloton, and so forth. But we think B2B could be even bigger over the next decade. So what do we care about food tech at all? Well, the world population will reach 10 billion in 2025, up from 7 billion today. So we see major opportunities in three areas. Number one, supply chain and food distribution and delivery, especially the last mile. Then midstream, food waste management, especially through use of AI software and data mining. And number three, upstream, food production, such as biofarming or even alternative proteins in Israel and in Singapore. These opportunities are global and with massive potential for upside over the next decade. Hi, I'm now thrilled to welcome Irving Fain, founder and CEO of Bowery Farming. Hi, Irving.
Thanks so much for having me, Hans. Another virtual meeting.
Another one. As you know, we've been an investor in Bowery since Series A in 2016. A lot more people know about indoor farming and vertical farming today. You also made a lot of progress over the last 4 or 5 years as well. And now you're essentially the category leader in this, especially in the US, and this is going to be a global opportunity as well. What makes Bowery unique, and what kind of differentiation have you been able to build over the last 5 years?
Certainly the innovation piece around LEDs is important, but I think what we recognized very early on that you needed more than just the lights. The lights made it viable, but they didn't necessarily make it scalable. And for us, what scalable means is large volumes of crops, large varieties of crops at consistent high quality, and ultimately at a price point that opens up a large market opportunity. And that's where we're leveraging computer vision, artificial intelligence, sensor and control technology, robotics and automation, and we're putting that together with the lights. And so if you look at our farms, we build warehouse scale indoor farms. We stack our crops from the floor to the ceiling. We grow under lights that mimic the spectrum of the sun, 365 days of the year, independent of weather and seasonality. We grow completely pesticide-free protected produce. We grow 100 times plus more productive than a square foot of farmland because we both grow faster than the average crop in the field, but we also get more yield per crop as well. And we use a very small fraction of water compared to traditional agriculture. So it's a totally different way of actually farming from a grow system perspective. Well, what we've also done is we've built the Bowery operating system. And so the Bowery OS is a proprietary system designed and developed by our team. And you can think about it like the brains or the central nervous system of everything we do. And it orchestrates our entire operation from before a seed is even planted to when our product is dropped off at our partner's distribution center. And so we're leveraging software and hardware and computer vision and AI to not only monitor and maintain everything that's happening with our crops, but actually to orchestrate and monitor everything that's happening across our whole operation, help our farmers know what to do and when to do it and where to do it. And so essentially to take the guesswork, the intuition, and the tedious nature of managing farming operations and to put it into software which can do this much more effectively and efficiently than people ever can.
Yeah, for everything you just specified on what makes Bowery different, I can imagine and visualize a very strong manager or executive in each of the functions you mentioned.
Yep.
And it's incredible to see what kind of a team you have been able to build over the last 5 years. Can you share some lessons on recruiting or retaining this kind of a talent on this very ambitious vision and goal?
Well, I think the first thing is we have a bit of an unfair advantage in the sense that we have a economic opportunity which is enormous. I mean, the crops that we can grow just at Bowery, it's about $100 billion a year opportunity in the US alone and $1 trillion globally. So you've got a huge economic opportunity and then a very important mission. I mean, where we started the conversation, the ability to be a part of helping to solve the climate crisis from an agricultural point of view is really compelling for a lot of people. And then the third triumvirate there is it's a really interesting and challenging problem. And so people who are attracted to challenging, difficult problems get really excited about what we're doing at Bowery. Now, I think my job as the CEO and as the founder is to go out and find the absolute best individuals in each area of the business that I possibly can. And I think part of what that means is actually identifying what matters most to us. And so, as you know, because we've been on this journey together for a bunch of years now, at each stage in the business, I had to step back and say, okay, at this part of our journey, what are the most important areas for us to be successful? And who do I need to make sure I have on board so that we can increase our odds as best as possible? Because building anything new is hard, to make sure that we can achieve that success. And so as we've grown, the areas of importance have grown as well. And I've gone out and worked hard to find the absolute best people that I could in each of those roles. I think the other piece of advice, much more tactical, is don't hesitate to spend money to hire a great search firm when you're hiring your senior executives in a business. And even more so, recognize that the best search firm for a CFO, for example, may not be the best search firm for a CTO and may not be the best search firm for a chief people officer. And so making sure that you're finding the best possible tool to go out and achieve that result you want is really key as well. And I think everybody knows you just have to dedicate a lot of time and energy and passion to it as well, because it's so important when you hire a leadership team, and there's nothing replaces just the time you spend with those people to make sure that they're a good fit for Bowery, but equally that Bowery is a good fit for them. It's got to be both ways.
Yeah. And in order to get farm up and running and make that efficient over time, requires lots of collaboration across teams, from food science to robotics to software to farm operations. It runs the entire gamut. How do you get these teams to work well and become more efficient together over time, and then how to solve problems together?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting and the most exciting aspects of Bowery, to be honest, which is you've got, a plant biologist next to a data scientist, next to a mechanical engineer, and everybody's sitting down collectively working through this same common problem, but coming at it from all different perspectives and experiences. And that's why we can find so many interesting and exciting opportunities in terms of what we're building and what we're creating. I think we've iterated the way in which we work at different stages in the business. And I think one of the things that we're really excited about now is thinking about not just projects, but bigger programs. And programs aren't just a single project, but oftentimes a collection of many projects across many different functions with different priorities against those different projects, and having sort of a single program owner and organizing ourselves within that program against all of the individual projects and sort of moving up a layer, if you will. It's something we're really beginning to invest a lot more in, and I think is a really important part of being able to just manage what, as you said, is a complex and very cross-functional business overall.
Yeah. When Jeff and I went to your farm, one of the early ones, and we tasted your food, it's amazing how good it tastes, and you don't even need dressing because the nutrients and the taste are all, built in, grown in. And it's amazing how that works. Can you share a bit more about that and how does that happen?
It,
Um, Go ahead.
it, honestly, like what I think is so important for us when we talk about all the time is you can have the most incredible robotics, the most incredible artificial intelligence and technology in general. If the food isn't great, it doesn't matter, right? It has to be great. Food is so personal. It's so cultural. We feed our families and our friends. And so from the very beginning, we've taken an enormous amount of pride and focused a ton just on the quality of what we're actually growing. And so one of the benefits of our system and the Bowery operating system is that we can ensure from the very beginning to when we harvest a crop that our plants are getting exactly what they need and when they need it. And even more so, we can actually tweak and change and make adjustments as crops are growing to change the actual taste and flavor profile of the plants itself. And the last part of this equation is outside what we eat generally as consumers is a very narrow band of what's actually available when it comes to plants and produce. And that's because what farmers outdoors care about is, does my crop resist pests? Does it resist drought? And does it travel long distances and show up and look good? It's not about quality. It's not about diversity. It's not about interesting flavors. It's those factors. And we aren't affected by any of those factors. We don't worry about pests. We don't worry about drought, and we don't have to travel very far. Our product gets to stores a day or so after we harvest it. So it's much fresher, much more nutritious. And so we can work with all these global seed companies and find incredible varieties and incredible seeds, sometimes decades old, that never grow outside, but that are absolutely delightful and exciting and vibrant for consumers in a way that they've never experienced.
And you can do this locally, and each of the farm will look exactly like each other as needed.
That's right.
And you can replicate that across the board at scale. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
In fact, the model gets more and more powerful as we scale. What we're essentially building is a distributed network of farms. And every new farm that comes into the network not only benefits from all the data and all the information, all the insight that came before it, and that farm becomes just as good as the network, but then that farm contributes data and strengthens the network overall. So as we grow more plants, as we build more farms, as we open new cities, what we're doing across the entire network gets stronger and better every week.
Can you share some of the different types of freshly greens that you're producing now and or supplying to the grocers, and what's kind of roughly the sort of product roadmap to the extent that you can share?
We focus on greens and herbs today. So everything from kales and, we were just talking, one of our best selling crops it's called crispy leaf, and it's actually an iceberg. But it doesn't taste or look anything like what you imagine an iceberg to taste like, right? Iceberg is a pretty crappy kind of bottom of the barrel crop that we normally think about. And again, we can go find incredibly delicious, crunchy, sweet version of iceberg that doesn't come in a ball like this, comes in little leaves. And so that kind of exploration for us, our basil is absolutely flavorful and unbelievable. Every time I walk into the farm and they're harvesting basil, you know it immediately because you can just smell it when you walk in there. And so across the board on our greens and herbs, I think we're excited about where we are, but we've grown hundreds and hundreds of varieties, not just of herbs and greens, but also other types of crops. So strawberries and tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers, onions, carrots, root vegetables, tubers. All of these are areas that you're going to see us move into in Bowery as we become a bigger and bigger part of the the produce aisle at grocery stores.
Yeah. So through all this journey, what are some of the surprises that you didn't expect but ends up happening, and how do you deal with them?
I am never too proud to admit, and I think I said this many times in the past, naivety is a real benefit when you're an entrepreneur, because you run through walls and you go around corners that a knowledgeable person would never think made any sense. And sometimes a brick wall is actually a brick wall, and sometimes a brick wall is actually a door. And the only way you know it is you run at it. And, I think I've learned a lot about running big physical infrastructure. Our farms are complex and, quite technical. And, I think the amount of talent and focus required inside of our farms to ensure that they're running efficiently and effectively across the board is something what we've really learned how to manage and sort of build around. And I think the other part of it is plants are plants, right? And they don't work like zeros and ones when you're writing code. And sometimes they have a mind of their own and they grow in a way that they want to. And so for us, figuring out how to manage and maintain that growth as effectively and in as controlled of a way as possible has been a really interesting and exciting journey. And I think you've said we've come a long way in 5 or 6 years on that front.
Yeah. So as you look towards the future, what are some of the big changes you expect to happen still in this business over the next 5 to 10 years?
The best part of Bowery for me is that we're just getting started. I guess to be fair, the best part of the Bowery actually is the team I get to work with every day. The other part that gets me so excited is the fact that we really are just getting started. This is such an enormous opportunity. It's such an important opportunity, and it's becoming more and more timely and more important as time goes on. And so, we are already coming off our recent fundraise to build more farms around the U.S. more quickly. And ultimately, those farms will not only be in the U.S., but this will become a global business, which you mentioned earlier. And I think it's very clear that the challenge we're solving isn't a U.S. challenge, it's a global challenge. It's relevant to every city around the world. So there'll be the expansion component of it from a physical perspective. And then the other side is going to be crop expansion, like we were just talking about. I think you'll see us move into many other varieties of crops and start to take up a larger and larger portion of the produce aisle, which is exciting for us because it's a better tasting crop. It's a more sustainable product. And what we oftentimes see is people will try our product and they'll hear us say it's better. And then they'll try it and their eyes will light up and say, you're right. This is much, much better than anything I've ever had. And it helps people reimagine what produce and fresh food should taste like and what it used to taste like. And so I'm really excited about bringing that to more people and across more different crops. And that's exactly where we're going to be heading.
And obviously, investors' attitude towards what you're doing in this category has changed over the last few years as well. Yep. You had a major fundraising round got done that was announced in May. What have you seen sort of the attitudes of the investor change over the years, so last few rounds? Yep. And what are the more sort of the questions we hear about the most often during the most recent round of fundraising?
So I think the biggest change is when I started this, and even when you and I were talking, Hans, I remember the very first meeting in your office on Sand Hill Road. Like, this was an if, right? It was like, if this happens, and if this becomes something, and if this becomes viable. This very much feels now like a question of when, not if. It's an inevitability. I think there's a real clear understanding of that from a retail perspective and therefore also from an investor perspective as well. And that's really powerful. I also think you're starting to see investors recognize that all indoor farming isn't the same. Because there's a period where it felt as if you're building an indoor farm, one is the same as another, and you're starting to see more sophistication and recognition that the technology and the systems that one builds has a critical impact on the economics of the business, the ability to grow a wide variety of crops, and ultimately the ability to scale. And so this is something we've focused on a lot at Bowery as well. The other piece of this, though, is the world in general of investing, and you know this better than I do, has changed. And I think that there's become a real willingness and desire from investors to finance businesses that didn't used to be considered venture capital style businesses. So venture capital isn't reserved just for software as a service or marketplaces. And I realize we're in a conference that's a lot about e-commerce marketplaces, but you're seeing people, when we raised our first rounds 5 or 6 years ago, and so you and folks at First Round Capital and General Catalyst all believed this long ago. But you're starting to see the general community now finance things like space exploration and electric vehicles and even electric flying vehicles and agriculture. And so new industries that 5 or 10 years ago did not see a lot of venture funding are now seeing dollars pour in. And that, for me, drives enormous optimism, both as an entrepreneur, but also just as a citizen of the world, because these early stage dollars are really what seeds the future that we're all going to be living in.
Yep, Rob and I definitely remember the early days. Well, thank you very much, Irving. That was a great session. Let's take a look at how Bowery works, and then we'll welcome Kat Cole, Alir from Slice, Dame from Adecco, and Ralph from Joker onto stage for the next segment.
Thanks so much for having me. Always a lot of fun.
Always a lot of fun.
Take a seed, grow something. Take that, grow more. Take a space, grow a farm. Take a neighborhood, grow a community. Grow more farms. Together, we can reimagine a whole new food system. At Bowery Farming, we've taken the seed of an idea that fresh, pesticide-free produce can be safely grown near you, and we're growing that into a reality. We're Bowery. The future of farming is just beginning.